All right, guys. So in this video, we're going to be making our next project. This time, we're going to be making it in Python. So the project that we're going to be making today is called the Number Achiever program. And so basically what this program is going to do is that, first of all, is going to, for the purposes of this program, we're going to generate a random number. And after we generate a random number, then we're going to prompt the user to guess that number. So the user won't be knowing the actual number, since we're going to be using the random library and generating a random number. But the purpose of this program is that the user has to end up guessing the correct letter to this program. So basically, the step-to-step guidelines of this program is, first of all, we're going to be importing random. So first of all, we import random. And recall how we are importing libraries is that we first have import, and then after we have import, we have the name of that library. So what this basically does is that it gives us features of random that we can use throughout our program to make our tasks easier. And so after we've imported that random, now what we need to do is declare a variable that will actually be generating the random number. So in this case, we're going to be generating a random number from the range 1 to 10. And so we're going to say number equals random dot rand int. And recall, we need to use random if we're using import random. So since we're doing import random in our program, we need to do module name dot and then the method we're using. But in the case of this program, since we're only going to be using rand int, now we can change the import random to from random import rand int. Since we're only going to be using one method called rand int, now all we need to do is go in the first line of code. So switch to import random to from random, which means I'm using only one function, so I don't need to use import random. So after we've done from random, then we do from random import, which is and then the name of the method we're using is rand int. And we need to make sure that we spell the rand int, the I in the rand int with a capital I, since there's case sensitivity matters when we're making these Python programs. So now that we do from random import rand int, now we don't need to include the name of the random when we're using that method. So we can get rid of random dot. And after we've declared the random number variable, now what we're going to do next is that we're going to set check equals true. And so
One thing that I wanted to point out here is that you didn't need to do this step, but you can do this step if you want to be more specific with what you're using early on, which is also a good way to organize it.
So in this case, we're going to be setting check equals true. And so basically what we're going to be doing in this program is that we're going to have infinite tries. And so once the user guesses a number, then the program is supposed to specify how far you are from guessing that certain number. And so in this case, every time a user guesses a number, the number tries is going to be incremented by 1. So after the user guesses that correct number, then it's going to specify how many tries you guessed the number correctly. So now that we had this check equals true, we're going to be initializing a variable called n1 and set that equal to 0. And what n1 basically, the purpose of n1 in this program basically means the number of tries we have.
This is basically a counter variable. So next, what we can do is we can start with a while loop.
So recall what a while loop is. A while loop is basically like a type of loop you can use. So you have the while, and the statement that comes after that is how many times you want to loop a certain thing. As long as the check is true, then it's going to execute whatever's in that while loop block. So in this case, we have while check, but when we're making our Python programs in our while loops, we have to make sure that we're not using parentheses around the check. So get rid of the parentheses and check. And after we created that, now we need to give a new line of code. So after you give a new line of code while check, we have to make sure that we're in the indentation. And recall that whenever you're in a while loop, for loop, or if condition, whatever is in the indented block after that line of code is going to be part of that condition or loop. If you're not in that indentation, well, essentially you're not going to be part of that condition or loop anymore. And so we need to make sure that we put that in the while loop just so that we can make this work. So once we're in the while loop, now the first step we're going to be doing in this while loop is that we're going to be prompting user for input to guess the actual number. So how we do this is first we can create a variable called n and set that equal to int, and then in input. And so basically what int means, as you recall from the Python videos, is that whatever the user types must be an integer, and it can be a text like hello world, since the purpose of this program is that the user is trying to guess a number and not a text. And so we need to say int and then open and close parentheses. So first of all, you need to do int and then open and close parentheses. So, and then in those open and close parentheses, we need to say input and open and close parentheses again. And in those parentheses, we can specify like the text of what is going to be outputting to the terminal. So in this case, we can say type a number for 1 to 10. So that specifies for the user and makes it clear for the user that what they need to guess has to be between 1 and 10 in order for this program to work. So after we've had that line of code, now we're going to be doing the checking the conditions. So basically, recall what a condition is that it allows the programs to make decisions. So basically, like how we make decisions in real life, it's like, for example, if you're outside and it's raining, then we're going to have to wear a raincoat, for example. So that's also a similar idea we have here. It allows a program, we can include conditions for a program in order to allow the program to make decisions. Whenever something is true, it's going to run that. Otherwise, it's not going to run that. So the first thing that we want to check is that if n is not the number, so when you do inequality signs, you have to do exclamation equals. So if n is not equal number, and you need to give a colon.
So
and then,
what we
new
do
line
here,
of code.
yeah, go ahead.
So recall that in our if conditions or while loops, we need to make sure that we end with colons, and like we have to get used to the Python, because Python is usually end. So basically, all the if conditions while loops end with a colon. And the important part of Python is that you have to make sure that the indentation is correct. So once you give new line of code, in that indentation, now what we need to do is print like the number, the distance you are from the actual number. So what you need to do is do print and then you are. And recall, how do you concatenate strings? Explain how to concatenate strings, Pranav.
So for concatenations, it's basically using the plus sign. Now, if you're concatenating, what's the difference between concatenation and like addition? If you're adding two things, you're adding essentially numbers. But if you're concatenating, then it's gonna involve strings. So this is a string because we have these quotations, and if we want to concatenate, we just do a plus sign. It's pretty simple. It's like gluing stuff together. And once we do UR, we have to essentially do the number. We have to essentially find the distance between the number that you guessed and the actual number that we're trying to guess. So that's essentially, if you use some simple math, it's just number minus n. But if we just type in number minus n like this is not going to work. And the reason why it's not going to work is because this is just technically a number, and so you can't glue those together. You have to make this into a string. So I'm just going to write str, and this works. You can literally do this. But what I like to do typically is I like to write my expressions inside of these extra set of parentheses just to be more organized in case I want to do extra operations on it. For example, if I want to divide this by 2, I can do that. So it's just for convenience, but you don't need these set of parentheses. Now, after this, what I can do is I can go out here and I can do a plus UR. Now this is a distance. You are this distance, and then away, or away from your number. But I'll just say away. And this is essentially what you're going to print out. Now, keep in mind, if I type this print statement outside of this if, then that's not gonna do the intended purpose, have the intended purpose, because the problem with this is that it's going to print out this statement every single time we're in this while loop, and not specifically when n is not equal to number.
And also, we need to make sure that we have matching parentheses. Now, you see in stir, we have the open and close parentheses. And inside those parentheses, we have another set of parentheses. And inside those parentheses, we have the actual expression. Now, if you remove one of these parentheses, then you're going to see that we don't have matching parentheses anymore. Because what it's essentially going to mean is that you have the stir open parentheses. And the matching parentheses in this case would be the parentheses after away. And we don't want that to happen. So we need to make sure that in our Python programs, we need to make sure that everything matches accordingly. So we need to have matching parentheses. And in this case, we have the stir open and close parentheses matching. And then inside the open and close parentheses, we actually have the variable that we want to convert to a string, since stir means string. And so after we have that if condition, now the other condition we're going to add is simple. So if whatever the user guesses is the number actually, so we have if n is the number, which means they guessed it correctly. So if n equals number, and recall, we need to use double equation sign when we're trying to compare two values. So we're comparing n to a number, which means we're going to compare two integer values together. Now, whenever you have single equation sign, recall is that, for example, we have n equals input type of number from 1 to 10, which means that whatever is on the right side of the equation or the right side is going to be stored on the variable on the left. So now that we have this if n equals number, now what we're going to do is check equals false. Now, the reason why we have check equals false is that, recall, in the beginning of the program, we said check equals true. And what while check means is that if you substitute true in for check, since check essentially is true, now it'll be while true. And what while true means is that this program is going to run forever. Now, we don't want this.
One thing I wanted to point out here is, I think you said check equals false, but it's just supposed to be check equals false, since you're setting check to become false instead of true, which it originally is.
Oh yeah, and then so when you're basically using conditions and when you're trying to compare two values together, then you have to use double equation sign. So if n equals number, but like when you're running the actual statement, so like check equals false, which is not a condition, it's just the statement based off of the condition above, then you have to use only one equation sign. And so now that we're using check equals false, now essentially the while false would mean that it's going to exit out of that loop. And basically, once the user guesses it correctly, then it's going to exit out of the while true loop. Since the while true loop indicates that the program is going to be running forever, now all we need to do is the last thing that we need to have as part of this while loop is n1 plus equals 1. And basically, the n1 plus equals 1 is the same thing as saying n1 equals n1 plus 1. And so what this means is that every single time you guess a number, then it's going to iterate the amount of tries we have. So for example, if I guess one number, then it's going to iterate 1, which indicates that I've guessed I had 1 try so far. If I guess the second number, then it's going to iterate that again, which means I have 2 tries so far. So
if you accidentally do n1 plus, this would be incorrect because you are not in Java or in other languages that have this operator. So you have to do the n1 plus equals 1.
And in Python, you can only do, or for example, variable plus equals 1, or you can do variable equals variable plus 1. So we have to keep track of that depending on what languages we use. We have to be aware of the syntax and what we're doing in these programs. So n1 equals n1 plus 1 is a more readable way of saying, which means that, oh, I want to iterate this variable by 1, but plus equals 1 is a shorter way of saying it, but that's like another way of saying it. So in this case, we'll do n1 plus equals 1, since that's a shorter way of saying it. And so now the last step of this program is now we're going to be printing out the congratulations message, which means your congratulations, you got your answer in the number of tries. So first of all, we're going to type congratulations and then plus. And now we're going to be concatenating the congratulations to the integer variable. So in this case, we would need to do stir of n1. Since n1, as we see above in the program, is an integer variable, since we've seen above n1 equals 0, we need to make sure that we convert it to a string instead of an integer in order to concatenate a string to a string. So now that we have the program, now it seems like this program is finished. So now if you run it, so we see that we're getting a message error. So it says cannot import random int from random. And so this is what we mentioned earlier. Like Python is going to check for case sensitivity. So the way to fix this is that there's actually in rand int, the I is supposed to be actually lowercase. So once we switch it to lowercase, now we just need to switch the actual program to lowercase. Now if you rerun it, now it's working. So for example, you just guess the number. So you can just guess 6 or 1, for example. So it's saying 3 away. And so basically, the 3 away means that we're 3 away from the actual number. So basically, this program is also indicating of the addition and subtraction, since we're getting clues as to how far we are from the actual number, in addition to if we need to add 3 to it or subtract 3 to it. So in this case, it says you are 3 away, which means it's a positive number. And so we're supposed to add 3 to the number we guessed earlier, which is 6. So 6 plus 3 is 9.
So one thing I wanted to point out is the main purpose of this program was mainly just obviously to test your program. But if you wanted to use this program in real life, you could, this is basically a free game. Even if you choose, for example, here you could choose the number. If you don't know what 6 plus 3 is, you can decide to just plug in 1, plug in 2, plug in 3, plug in 4, 5, all the way to 9, and eventually you'll get the right answer. But this program is essentially to help you learn how to add and subtract numbers so you can get it in the least amount of tries possible, which is the intention, because we have our N1 counter. So you can determine how many tries that you figure your answer out in. So if you type in 9, you got congratulations, and you got it in 2 tries. Now, the one problem with this is, notice that there's problems with the spacing. There's 3 away, and then this exclamation, and then we have 6, we have no space, and then 2 tries. These are not hard fixes at all. So first one we'll do is we'll start from bottom and we'll go up. So there's 2 tries. We can just insert a space before the T, and that should fix that. The next one is after the exclamations. What we can do here is we have type a number from 1 to 10, and then we can just add in a space, or maybe even 2 spaces if we wanted to keep a little bit more distance. The next thing is this you are something away. We can just do you are this and then space away. So that's just fixing the spaces. You don't have to do this, but if you wanted to make your code more professional and look better, you can do this. So let's go ahead and give it a test. Type a number.
Whenever you're running print statements in Python, Python is basically going to check for whatever's in quotation marks. So since we have this space away, then it's going to check for that space and execute it accordingly. The reason why it was weird is because we didn't have that space in a way. So now we see that it's more clean, and when we actually run it, it says type a number from 1 to 10, and we see that it's giving a space, and so now it looks cleaner. So now if we can guess a number, for example 7, and now we can see that it's more cleaner. It says you are -2 and then space away. So those are small fixes that we can make to our program to make it more cleaner, but we essentially got the idea. So now if we guess 7 initially, it says -2 away. Well, what we need to essentially do is do 7 minus 2, which is 5. And then it's going to print out the congratulations message. And it says you got your answers in 2 tries, since you guessed 2 tries, which are first 7, and then the second one we guessed was 5.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to also say is basically what you're doing is you're taking this number and you're adding it to this -2, so this number, and you're getting 5. Now the other thing is, basically we tested this program, and both times we tested it, I think we only did 2 tries. So let's try more tries, like maybe like 5 or 10 tries, make sure our program works for all of them, because chances are that it's the N1 thing is not working. So let's see. So if we try 8, you're 2 away. Instead, let's just keep on doing 8 just to add our counter, just to add numbers. So we're adding a bunch of numbers to our counter, and then now let's do the right one. 8 plus 2 is of course 10. So it says congratulations. Let's count up the tries. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we guessed our number in 9 tries, so we obviously got 9. So if you wanted to test this out with someone who is just learning addition and subtraction, if they get this correct in the least number of tries, typically that should be 2 tries, right? Because the first try is obviously a guess, and so if you're lucky, you're lucky. You have a 10% chance. But if you get that wrong, that's fine. If you get the second one wrong, that means you have to review your addition subtraction. But if you get it correct in the second term, then and you keep on doing this, you keep on testing, and you keep getting it right in the second time or first time if you're lucky, then you have mastered addition or subtraction. So that's essentially one thing that you can use this program for, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, so this is pretty much the basis of the program we're making right now. So keep in mind, we're going to make a part 2 to this program. So our next part of this, our next part to this program is that instead of having infinite tries, what we had right now, we can have a user guess as many tries as they want. The next series will be having limited tries. So it's gonna be more representative of the games right nowadays. Like for example, Hangman, we don't have unlimited tries in Hangman. We have like limited tries. So that's what we're gonna be covering in our next part. And for example, in our next part, we're gonna have 6 tries. So if the user has to guess in less than 6 tries in the next part of the series.
So yeah, that's basically concludes the video here. So hope you found this video helpful.
Thank you.